Okay, rock shaping. We start with those rebar uprights, like we've showed how to put those in the ground in our last session, or in the bond, or in concrete areas, in a deck even. And in this case, we have the footing there, also on the coping, and in that little footing in the back that we poured up with those rebar uprights hung, as I showed you in that little illustration. So we want to learn how to do rock shaping though. Now, what to do with all these pieces of rebar sticking up in the air? Well, that's what we're going to discover. We're going to actually go to some other jobs and see what those other jobs were about, and it's the same technique we're going to use here. So let's check that out.
Okay, let's talk about the steps. I already did a design in pencil, then presented a colored version to the client. They loved it. It got sold. So we epoxy the steel in, and we got the stub ups. Those are just the pieces of steel that are sticking up in the air. So let's talk a little bit about the next step. Here's the drawing that I drew, and I'm working on this rock right here. As you can see when I walk back a little bit, this is the overall feature. There's going to be a good anchor stone there, and they have a good one right here. And so now I need to start the process of shaping it out. This is one of the critical points where you can either make it look more or less natural and realistic. So we're trying to focus in on this guy right here. So we've got our epoxied steel in, down in the step, going up into the steps that are created, the faux steps that are going up to the top of the slide up there. So now what I need to do is shape this rock out. So what we want to do is figure out where to start the bend. Obviously from the picture, you want to do a short one here and a tall one there. They're already going up high there and coming down lower to here. So that's good. We got stuff we can play with. There's a few more holes we're going to epoxy steel in that'll wrap around. They'll be the horizontals. These are the verticals. And so what I'm going to do is bend this one down and get an angle. But you want to make sure when you're putting these first bends in that you don't do it exactly right down the center line of the rock necessarily. You want to offset it to one side or the other. Asymmetry is always good. If you look at nature, you see lots of asymmetry. There's balance in the asymmetry, and there's also symmetry, of course. You know, beehive is very, very symmetrical. But in the decaying environment of rock and waterfalls and all that, there's usually angles. It's not usually right down the middle and horizontal, perfectly horizontal. So you want to keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and bend some of these, and I'm using my bender bar. This is just the big one you can get at Home Depot. You can order them online, I think, get different ones, shorter ones, smaller. The pins are closer together than this one. And then I'm just using these loop tie wires with the spinner. I think I've shown some of those videos in the past, but you put the front end through, pull on it, and spin. And that's after you loop it around your rebar, and then you put your spinner in these little holes right here. So anyway, we're aiming to get this rock started and shaped out. After that, we're going to be doing the burlapping. But at this point, we just need to get that shape the way we want it and have it be more natural. Remember, the picture shows it tapering up a little bit. So I'm going to work on that. Okay, step 2 here, at least in this little tutorial deal. I showed you what we had. We start off with is our basic boulder shape. This is the footprint of it as it attaches itself to the ground, this retaining wall or this wall, all the way around. That's the foot or footing area. It comes on up. Now, I took a piece of 10-foot steel and I attached it to one of these uprights because I needed to connect. I needed to set sort of the backbone of the rock, you might say. So I bent this one and overlapped it. You want to get, you know, when you're doing a pool, you need it like a 2-foot overlap, 24 inches, I think, 24 inches. For faux rock and stuff, you know, it's you know, it just needs to hold itself up. There's no structural issue there. So there may be a 20-inch overlap on the engineering if you look at that. I haven't seen it in so long, I can't remember. But yeah, whatever your engineering plans call for, you get that overlap. And so I'm bringing it down, but I'm bringing it down at an angle. See, it's not flat. And maybe you can start to see, I can see it through the camera lens, that is the top of the rock, and then it's going to attach itself to that side. And these other rock rebar pieces are going to connect to that. And they come on down. So we're basically working on this top right corner going across, connecting to the back there. This has a real nice angle to it, so I might add more angle to this guy. Might reposition that a little bit now that I look at the picture. So you're always going back and forth, checking your work as you're going along, seeing how it looks. If it's looking funky, you know, if it's a good funk, cool. If it's a bad funk, then you got to defunkify it. So, all right, so we're going to continue working. Again, we attached a 10-foot piece. Now we're going to bend that around and wrap around and create a perimeter shape, and that'll help stabilize the rock and allow us to continue to completely attach all the rest of these and flush out the rock, and then it's ready for burlap. So so there you go. We're gonna continue on. All right, so let's take a look at the tie wires. I got 2 of them on here. You want to get 2 tie wires in, at least for me in the beginning, at your connection points with the rebar. That way the rebar is not going to move around. And so now what I want to do is I want to get a bend on that piece of rebar and bring it around to attach to this one. So I got 2 bender bars. Let's see if I can do this holding the camera in one hand and using the bender bar in the other. Kind of see how it works. There you go. And so we're kissing this one. So he's ready for a piece of tie wire. These bender bars are pretty heavy duty. I mean, heavy, not just heavy duty, but they're heavy. There's smaller ones. A lot of guys use lighter, smaller ones. But that's how you use the bender bar. Get that nice bend right here. Nice tight bend. Okay, so we continue to bend the steel, and we're getting it shaped out. I want to show you something when it comes to shaping out your rocks. If you want to keep them a little more dynamic, not quite so roly-poly, roundy-fatty, you can get bends in there. And then again, we're talking about the angulation of design. So I have a bend on the little ones, on the lowest ones. Then as they come up, that bend gets higher. We're going to put a piece of steel right there, and that'll be a place where that creates an angle on your rock. So if you just did that and they were just straight down, you could just use the shape that was there and just bulk it up in your shotcrete, but you got to remember to do that, and we would be doing that anyway. And that is, if you just put it in the steel a little bit, it doesn't take that much time, and that accentuates, you can accentuate that in concrete. We've continued to move on, connected the part we talked about right here, bent it around. I used 2 bender bars right here, and to get that tighter bend, and then just carried it around this way. The long piece of rebar which was sticking out, I just bent it up in the air because we have other stuff here in the way they would bang into. So you just simply bend it up, and as you bend it around, then you can lay it back down again, which is what we did. So I've connected it here. There's 2 tie wires, 2 tie wires, 2 tie wires, and that just keeps it from sliding around. Even with 2, it can still get a little. You can see that's not quite a totally tight joint, but it's better than nothing. So now that piece of rebar, that same one, we're going to continue to bend that around, wrap it around, and that'll establish this outer back side of the stone. I haven't decided if I'm going to bring them all the way over or leave them out and then have a bend in them. I probably have a little bend in them. That'll give another planar facet right there. That'd be kind of cool. So again, we just continue that rebar, wrapping it around. You can tell there's no set way you could start your rebar anywhere, but you just have to keep an idea of what your shape is. It's nice to get a backbone, if you will, on a stone. Remember, off center, not right dead center. Watch your perfect parallel, perfect verticals, and perfectly horizontals. You want to get that busted up. Always keep it at angle. So, and remember to get those bends to create a variation in the planes on your rock. You don't, you just you want to give yourself a lot of creative options and stuff, and watch the roly-poly round fat little Flintstone land rocks that sometimes happen. So let's continue. Okay, continuing on this stone rebar shape process. We added 2 more sticks that hadn't gotten in the last batch of epoxying in, so those are stuck in. You can go ahead and start shaping them if it's a stable enough position for you to do that, and that saves time. So you want to definitely, get the rock going, man. As we move in closer, you can see how we took this one piece of rebar again that we started, it was wrapping around, and we just kept it going and brought it all the way around and brought it back down to here. So this is that one long piece that we attached over here, and then looped it around and kept it going all the way back to here. I also just added in one here, 5-foot piece, again double ties. That's along the bottom. I don't know if you can see this in the video, but we've got an interesting plane here. We've got an interesting plane here, here. These are all offset planes. They're not all the same. They have variety to them. You can see from this side there's going to be a peak point. There's a little plane right here. A little plane you could put right here, one here. Then it comes around and we got that yellow dot spot there, which I'm going to continue taking those pieces of rebar, one of them, and follow that up. And that'll give ourselves a place to go ahead and track where the planes are going to be when we're doing our shotcrete. Here's an additional stick that I added because this was too short. This one right here, so we brought that up. Same thing here, I'm going to add another one to this one. This one will be brought down. You want to try and have even gaps approximately in your spacing of the rebar. You don't want to have it really tight over here and really big over there. You want to kind of keep it even. I kind of go overboard and get more rebar in here on these things than I probably need to. And I just like being able to have the shotcrete and the burlap and all that. The more pieces of steel you put in there, the more you have less draping of the burlap when you shotcrete it. Yeah, it probably is a waste of time. I should probably be cutting back on that just to increase my efficiency. But anyway, you play that by ear. Could probably get away with one piece of rebar here and here and not have this much on there. But I like these things to be stable, and it's just a good policy to have more steel than not enough steel. So can you kind of see the shape here that we're going for. So we'll continue shaping it out with the rebar, doing our horizontals now. We bent over all the top ones, as you saw at the hickey bar. And remember, you can put the end of the handle, slide it on down the rebar, and then just bend it over. And that's one way to do it quick and easy if you've got a nice, strong, solid support for your bend point. So there you go. So we will continue the shaping of this rock, and I'll show you where we're at next time. Okay, man, this is the finished rebar rock. As you can see, we added in all the additional steel pieces. We're trying to keep the gaps between the steel portions. It's sort of a grid. They call it on center. We got that all shaped out, and we're trying to get this rock to match somewhat of this right here. And if you look at this stone compared to what's out there, you can kind of get an idea that we're kind of close. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but that's what we're aiming for. So the first piece of steel we put in that I told you about was this one right here. I'm marking it just so you can tell that's kind of the anchor of the rock shape. Once we got this corner, this one piece of rebar in, then all the rest of the steel could lay up against it. We also then we created a plane here, so these vertical uprights on the back are bent over to hit this sort of the backbone of the rock, you might say. We're going to be putting burlap on this, and so it needs to have a good grid pattern so there's not huge big gaps that would cause the concrete to be really heavy duty in those big gaps, and it can sometimes blow through the burlap, so it's good to have smaller sizes. This is a lot of rebar for a rebar rock, for a rock, based on the codes and stuff, but I like having too much than not enough. It actually structurally strengthens all the stuff that it's adjacent to. It ties the wall together. There's a lot of pieces of rebar epoxied into everything, and so that's going to cut down on the chance of movement and give us a more long-lasting project. I pointed out in the earlier portion of this session, these points here where I bent the rebar and changed the plane. Instead of just a wall that's flat on this curve of the rock, it actually has a plane here and a plane here. And so that is giving us more life, more dynamic aspects to this stone. And so when you're making your rebar rocks and your faux rock work, you want to try and make sure your rocks are dynamic. They're not just roly-poly, lumpy bumpies. And again, the picture, if you can learn how to draw and practice drawing your pictures and practice drawing rocks, you'll be able to start to develop your eye, and you need to have that eye to see, to be able to bend the rebar and create your project. So
let's review this job a little more closely before we move on. Let's take a look at it and really talk again about rock shapes. You'll notice we've got our rebar. We're going to be talking about burlapping the insides, but we've now moved on, and we show here the shotcrete has been blown on and texturized. Look at the shapes. We've got big stones to the right of the waterfall as you're looking at it, small ones left, right, different angles, different shapes, a lot of variety, a lot of it's balanced, but we have a lot of asymmetry in the design, and that's really important. We want to really keep that going on when we're doing these rocks. Again, there's the burlap phase. We can see how that works. Some of the rocks don't have any burlap because we're going to just shoot them solid. Now we're moving on to that rock we did. There it is on the corner there. Back to the shotcrete. So we're showing the different shapes and angles here. That's really what I want you guys to get that angulation. Here's the texture code on there with the fog code, that color, and then we finish it up. And this is what we're looking at when we're done with the project. One last little project we'll check out before we move on and finish up this session.
Hey, what's going on? Mr. Dave on the rock pile. We are making rocks. Hey, I want to show you how I start a rock. All right. You start a rock by epoxying steel into concrete when you have a slab you're working on, or you make a little footing and stick it in the ground, 6-8 inches down. Get your uprights going on. And then what I do is I start off with one piece of rebar to create kind of the backbone of the rock. And then all the rest of these, you then can attach to the backbone, tie them off, and you got your rock. You want to keep angles and stuff going on instead of roundy roly-poly, unless you want roundy roly-poly. If you do, then you can just keep your shapes more roundy, but we're trying to make more fractured rock.
Okay guys, let's review session 4, the first part of rock shaping here. We went through a lot of different things. You want to focus on the rebar in its footings and in the epoxied holes. We want to start with that backbone when you're shaping out your rocks, and remember to use different planes and other shapes to get that natural look. Always remember to put the rebar caps, those orange plastic caps on the ends of your rebar uprights for safety. Fall on a piece of rebar, it's not gonna be pretty. So good job, awesome. You've been hanging in there. I hope you've been enjoying this. Please jot down, take notes, re-listen to different sessions, and we really want to get this stuff locked in your little fuzzy head. So on to rock shaping part number 2. We're going to be looking at a whole bunch of new aspects of the rock shaping process, the burlapping, how to do cantilevered concrete shapes and stuff. So let's check it out. On to rock shaping 2.